All right, we are live. Filthy Regs Outreach. We're back. It's been a minute. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm calling in from the wrong side of America, as I like to say sometimes. I'm doing well. It has been a while. How are you?
I've been all right. This time of year can get a little depressing for me, but I'm holding it together. Holding it together. Things are looking good for the new year. Hoping to
Right.
kick off 2023 with some positivity and uh, fresh starts. Fresh starts are always good.
Likewise. But we got some unfinished business to handle here in 2022 as we round the year out, and so um, I think it can be positive. But I think there's some truth that needs to come out, and that's what I'd like to talk about today. Especially monitoring the recent events in the greater Seattle Sound, specifically Pierce County region. I was recently discussing and watching the news of Pierce County Sheriff Ed Troyer
Yeah.
and the trial and that proceeding and how that went. And I see a lot of different. I don't want to just say opinions, but opinions, emotions, feelings surrounding that. Are you seeing that out there as well?
Yeah, I've seen opinions on both sides of the coin. Some people, oh, I'm so glad he got off, and how I don't know. And then obviously the majority for me, my majority that I'm looking at is this is some BS. It seems like police don't ever get held accountable, or they always get off when they do things right. And I can see both sides, but let's talk about that.
Well, my feelings, opinions on this is, as our organization, we aim to bridge the divide between communities, specifically BIPOC communities, those that have been disenfranchised, underserved, etc., and law enforcement. Because for the most part, we need safe communities for our kids to grow and live and thrive, and our families to grow and live and thrive. And again, I want to stress, for the most part, most of our law enforcement out there are out there to do the right thing and serve their communities.
Mm-hmm.
There are a very select few that fall short of that measure,
Yeah.
And so when we look at something like this, and I kind of apply my own experience to some of those that fall short of that measure, we just really want to explicitly say that we're not targeting or saying paint all law enforcement with a negative broad brush. But we do need to highlight where some of them fall short. In this particular instance, I believe that they've, specifically Mr. Troyer, as some of the facts came out before the trial and came out in the trial, are short of that mark. And
Right.
so the larger implication is, how do we go about the business of building these bridges and maintaining that trust, or creating that trust in our communities, when the person at the head of the chain
Right.
has a difficult relationship with the truth, or at least by all accounts it appears that way, right? How do we do that work?
Yeah, I mean, that's that's why it's difficult work, Um but I would say, just communication and discussion, even us talking about this, and inviting anybody that's watching on Facebook to call in, to join this discussion. Maybe we can come up with some solutions, but we could talk about it all day long. It all boils down to actions. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to do it? And then actually doing it, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions, and they can run their mouth, or, type their fingers on Facebook about how messed up this is, or if we need to do this, but they don't do nothing about it but talk.
Well, let me define the problem a little bit as I see it. One of the things that I see as a problem that creates this distrust is when we see things like this. And so for those that may not have been following it closely, I'll give a real quick summation of what happened. Sheriff Ed Troyer uh, called law enforcement for assistance based on his interaction with an African American male in his neighborhood. And the evidence showed that he had stretched the truth, or had at least been dishonest, or at least
Right.
been very loose and fast with the truth. But what the ramifications of that interaction could have been, fortunately, this man didn't lose his life, because we've seen over time
Oh,
what
yep.
happens when people come guns blazing, guns drawn, to someone who, as he said, threatened his life. So let's put that
Mm-hmm.
in context. The sheriff of Pierce County called for law enforcement assistance in his neighborhood because a person of color had threatened his life. How do we think that could have gone? So when they say little lies or whatever lies don't really matter, that lie could have mattered. It could have meant someone's life. But the other implication to that is Mr. Troyer didn't think about the fact that he leads one of the largest county sheriffs in the state.
Right.
So what message does that send, first of all, to the other officers that are doing the right thing day in and day out, that go out to serve their communities? What message does that send? What message does that send to the people of his community that rely on his law enforcement agency for help? And so without parsing the details about how he lied or this or that, if that's the feeling of the community, how do you continue to lead that law enforcement agency and that community? And then how do we start to build bridges and bridge those gaps? Very difficult work.
Yeah. Huge loss of trust. I would think, even if well, obviously he didn't get found guilty. So that's, I don't know. We can nitpick that whole trial. We can talk about why, our beliefs, why he should have been found guilty or whatever. But bottom line is there's somebody that's like you said, leading the sheriffs for Pierce County and has this taint on his name. I think he should step down, honestly. That's my opinion.
I'm of the opinion that the way our system is set up, we have to respect. We're taught to respect the verdict of a jury, and we'll get to the step down portion in a minute. But let's think about we got to give hats off to the Pierce County prosecutor, right? And that sounds like, whoa, what are you talking about, right? That's almost like blasphemy. But let's call it what it is. They were courageous enough to go and prosecute what they knew to be a crime, regardless of who it was that committed that crime. There's some courage in that, right? Because we do know that the sheriff's position is an elected position, just like the prosecutor's elected position. And so we have two titans of the political world in Pierce County going head to head. Mind you, this is a misdemeanor case, and the prosecutor stuck their office's neck out to prosecute that crime. So you got to give credit where credit's due. Some may disagree with me. Now, back to whether or not he should step down. Of course he should. Because if you don't have the full faith and trust of your constituents and the people that you're there to protect and serve, then maybe somebody else can better serve that role, and then maybe it'd be easier for us to continue to do the work of building those bridges so that we can have safe communities, and that, again, folks that are situated like us in filthy rags, those of us that are incarcerated, we aim to build our communities back, and we can't do that without partnership with law enforcement. And we can't have that partnership with those that we don't trust, and we can't ask the people in those communities that we have influence over to have that trust.
Right.
So that's why I believe that, it'd probably be best if he did step aside. But let's look at it from a practical way as well. How many people, black, white, orange, have gone to trial and have had someone from that law enforcement agency testify at trial? And how many people are not convinced that their law enforcement in their trials, that the absolute truth came out from the testimony of law enforcement? So that's a difficult way to try to build a gap when you say, hey, wait a minute. If that person got on the stand and told something that was a mistruth or misleading, how many other times did that happen within that agency? Because the head of that agency is basically given a green light to do it and goes unpunished and unaccountable.
Yep, exactly. I wonder how many times that's happened already.
Right. So if we want to dig into it, there's a lot of different conversations to be had, and I think when we start to get into, well, what do we do about it, right? Because I just wanted to spend a little bit of time defining the problem, but now what do we do about it? I kind of alluded to it. These are elected officials. Right, so when we start getting into things like your right to exercise your civic duty to, I don't know, let's say participate in a jury, that's the things that you can do about it. You can participate in those processes that normally have not been favorable to us, and you can change that by participating in that process. So let me start with that one. When you go to a jury trial, you want to have people in your jury that are representative of the community. Right, all of us should be represented, And so I suspect, and I haven't seen the makeup of the jury in that trial, but I suspect it may not look like the makeup of the community in the entire county. Not just as far as what color you are, but from what socioeconomic demographic do you come from, right? Are these all retired people, or does it look like a slice of our community? And then the second thing is understanding that they're elected officials. We have a civic duty to participate in our elections. So we can talk about it all we want on this phone call or on this live, but until you put boots on the ground and you start going and participating in those elections, that's when you can make a change in your systems. So Ed Schroyer, he can just be voted out the door. So there's a lot of different things that we could do about it.
Yeah, and that's like when I went back and said, people not participating, running their mouths on Facebook, talking about stuff, running their fingers on Facebook. How many people actually really vote? How many people?
Right.
I know there's been a few times that I've gotten a ballot in the mail and I've just kind of put it aside. But when you talk about making changes, talk about getting involved in these different processes, like you said, being on a jury, voting. I think a lot of people feel, and I did at one point, felt like, my vote doesn't matter. I'm just one person. You know what I mean? If I vote or not, nothing's going to change. My vote doesn't count. How do you get past that? How do you convince somebody that thinks like that to get involved if they feel like their one vote is not going to matter?
I've been told before, when you do nothing, nothing happens. At least if you make an attempt, something may happen. So let's talk about the numbers, right? If you look at the numbers of people on a jury, let's go back to that for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
There's 12 people on a jury, right? And in the event that somebody is not convinced as to the guilt of the person on trial, oh yeah, that one vote really does matter. It really does matter. It could be the difference between a wrongful conviction or not obtaining a conviction.
Right.
In the event of your vote for things like a general election on the presidential ticket, there's 330 some odd million people in the United States. And so I could see how that seems like my vote doesn't matter. But we need to be more educated on the political process so you know that vote does matter, because you're voting for an electoral vote. We won't get into the weeds on that. But more important to us, even if you don't believe that your one vote is impactful in a general election for like the president, it certainly is impactful when you start thinking about things like who your prosecutor is, when you start thinking about things like who your sheriff is, who your school board officials are, because now there's fewer numbers, fewer votes, and those margins that by which people win or lose are much smaller. So we got to encourage people to get smart on the process, because this isn't a civics lesson, but the impact is real. For that guy who had law enforcement pull up guns drawn when he was in a place where he could lawfully be doing something he was doing lawfully.
He was working.
Didn't it
say
he was
40 police officers or something like that?
Correct. So at least, right? So it impacted him for the rest of his life. That could have went all bad. He could have been on a T-shirt. He could have been the next BLM movement,
yeah.
Right? That's not what people want. We just want a safe community for everyone, and that includes the people who live in the community and our law enforcement, those that are there to protect our community.
Right.
We want it to be safe for them too. So our organization, you and I, and all the people that support us, we want to build that bridge. We want to make community safer, and where our impact lies is being able to impact the people that we can influence and that we can reach. But where their responsibility lies is to be able to make the impact in that commitment of, one, responsibility, and two, taking responsibility for your actions. And so when we have leaders in any of those communities, right, both in the law enforcement community and in the communities that we impact and that we work with, we have to have accountability and responsibility. So today I'm simply asking that you guys that are listening and support us, make your impact heard and felt. Don't wait till election day to make people aware of how you feel, if this was unjust or you feel it was unfair. call your city council member, vote in the next election, but in every election. And don't only be concerned with the top of the ticket. It impacts us as all Americans. It'll impact us. But look at the things that impact how our kids go to school or where they go to school. Look at the things that impact how the sheriff is elected or how he does his duty, and the prosecutors. And don't vote blindly. Look at what they do. Don't listen to what they say. Look at what they do. So I wish we could have had this message on the other side of the election. We don't get political. We just encourage everybody to participate in their communities.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You know,
I've got it looks like one person is watching live right now, but I wanted to remind people, if anybody's tuning in, if you're watching, you know, drop us your phone number, join the discussion if you want to get involved in this discussion. We'd like to hear some opinions of people that support us, and talk about it. I mean, there's people from the other side of the coin too, maybe, that believe that you know, that this verdict was well, I'm not gonna stay, but, you know, call or give us your number so we can call you so we can talk about this, is what I'm saying.
And also, we encourage, if not this time, then in the future, you know, because there's always things that seem to be, I just use the word controversial, but these discussions, as you alluded to in the beginning of the phone call, this is what allows us to come together. We don't have to debate. We just need to discuss. We need to get these things out in the open so that we can have an understanding, first of all, of what's going on, and have an informed opinion, and then inform that discussion. So we'll continue to do these, and I'm glad that we had the opportunity. I just want to reiterate and say we do thank all of our law enforcement out there that put their lives on the line every day. And they're you know, similar to our soldiers that protect our country.
Yes.
They protect our freedoms. They protect our roads. They protect our homes when we're sleeping. That's not lost on us. But I would imagine that all of those hardworking law enforcement officers want to be led by people of integrity.
Yes.
And it's you know, you bear that responsibility of making sure that they speak up and speak out when that integrity, that trust is compromised. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and thank you, Jessica, for having us.
Yes, and we'll definitely do this again. Maybe we'll make this like a weekly thing with
You have 1 minute left.
with some updates of what's going on in the community. What do you think about that?
I would definitely be encouraging. We can have different people from this side of America call in too.
Yep, for sure. All right, thanks
have a good
everybody
evening.
for joining us. We will be back.
All right, take care.
The caller has hung up.
And have a great night.